Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mediation and Beyond's YouTube channel, where we discuss all things of life, really, relationships, marriage, divorce, finances, parenting, and the list goes on. So this morning, I'm really honored to have Caroline Wetzel. She's a finance, I like to say a finance guru because I really respect all the things she does. But let me introduce her. Thanks for coming on, Caroline. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yeah, Caroline offers clients a fresh approach to personal finances by providing a safe space, much like therapy. So it's kind of like financial therapy in a way, to talk about life's uncertainties and offering them relevant financial advice over time as they navigate through their challenges. And financial challenges is something we all deal with. While Caroline has spent most of her career in financial services, working in the United States and Switzerland, I'd love to hear some of those stories, Caroline. She's now joined Procyon? Procyon Partners as private wealth advisors, and I think you're in Shelton, Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
We are, yes.
So Caroline has a BS in policy and analysis and management from Cornell, holds her MBA in finance. She's a certified divorce financial analyst, certified financial planner, and the list goes on. So Caroline, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really happy to have you here. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I've met you, we've had conversations over time, and I've grown to, you have I think your newsletter, Coffee with Caroline, which I really enjoy reading. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about in bringing you on, and why I selected you, was because I thought you'd be a great person just to talk about people's money stories. And so what I mean by money stories isn't like how they've grown their wealth or how they've become impoverished. It really is about our relationships with money and kind of where that comes from. Watching our parents, watching our grandparents, things said growing up, how we grew up. I'm a believer that, how you enter a marriage or how you enter your parenting is also a result of our parental genealogy, or our relationship models. So in terms of talking about that, can you share a little bit about your money story and how you got to where you are?
Would be happy to, Colleen. And thank you again for this opportunity to enjoy this conversation together. I'm the daughter of two teachers. My mom was a high school teacher and my dad was a community college professor. So money and managing money was always kind of the undertone or the narrative growing up. We had very simple means, and even things like going out to dinner were not commonplace. I had to get all straight A's on my report card and then use proper English and grammar to build a business case to go out to the pizza place nearby. And so from a very young age, I was aware of the importance of money and being visible and aware of money. But I was very fortunate in that while money was managed with intention, it was also not taboo. When I was very young, I was allowed an allowance of $1, and I was taught, of the portion of the dollar, let's make sure we give 25 cents to church. Let's make sure 25 cents goes into your savings book, etc. What I had not appreciated, Colleen, until I was later in life, was that wasn't commonplace, that understanding and awareness of money and the power that comes with understanding your money was not necessarily a lesson that all children were taught, and taught so clearly by their own parents. And that's what was kind of enlightening for me, how that became from a personal story to a professional story. You see, when...
I was just going to ask, so did your parents have that training as well?
No. My parents taught English and Greek and Latin and religions of the world, and their parents were in different industries. And it was just more an awareness of how pieces fit together, the structuring and the processes, and just a vigilance to create a quality of life for our little family, where those roots came from.
So your parents so your grandparents, they didn't raise either your mother or your father. they didn't raise them to have this awareness around the significance and power of money.
I'm not aware that there was an intentionality in the same. There may have been. What I'm more aware of is the behaviors mom and dad would reference with their grandparents, with my grandparents and their
Right.
parents. So by way of example, my grandmother's focus on monitoring the budget. Grandma was very deliberate about what came in, what came out, balancing at that time, very tactically, her checkbook. My grandfather was very upfront all the time. Oh, here are decisions we can make this month. Let's delay this purchase until next month. It was more the behaviors rather than the intentional teaching. And so to your point earlier, I think my own personal experience was a combination of deliberate action and circumstances and behaviors that came about.
Well, what I heard you saying is one of the things about like giving money to church or giving money to a charity. Like when you look at even a dollar, right? Even a dollar, just simply, there are many places a dollar could go, right? And so there has to be that awareness and intention around that. So I like hearing that from your parents. They seem ahead of most of us, right? You know?
Well, what I'm grateful for, and another lesson they taught me, is that we are all works in process. And I'm sure as they look back on their own parenting journey, there are things they are satisfied with and things that they wish they could do differently. And that's another thing that I think is important and that we've talked about before, Colleen, the importance of acknowledging we are dynamic, we are continuously changing. And so one key component of the relationship, even with our money, is to recognize that we are works in process. What we did yesterday served at a point in time. Today, where we are in this moment, presents new opportunities, and we have choices to proactively and positively influence it going forward.
So did you kind of, did you by choice end up in the financial world because you believe that's the training from your parents, or was it happenstance, or how did that come about for you?
Thank you for asking. It was very circumstantial. All that I knew when I was going off to undergrad at Cornell was I wanted to work with people. I loved being part of the process of being trusted so that together we could make new and thoughtful decisions. But 2 years into my 4-year program, I was notified that I would be the last graduating class of this interdisciplinary major that primarily focused working with people. Or if I took a couple more finance and economics courses, I would then round out my experiences and be positioned for a new major. And I thought, well, I've never really formally taken some of these courses. Let me try them out. And Colleen, it was the first instance of one of the mantras I offer clients today, that life doesn't happen according to plan. And so, let's be honest. And so until or unless we have the honesty and the awareness and the curiosity to say, in this new moment, what are my new choices? And then we, with calculated, intentional risk, take it. Life can positively change in ways we never see coming. And those new classes exposed me to the power that I embrace today that finances and numbers offer. If I can help people have a safe space to acknowledge what are those uncertainties that keep them awake at night, what are their biggest financial fears, what is it that is undermining their ability to move forward with confidence, and we simply call it out, then I can use information, I can use tools, and I can use a regular ongoing process to be literally and virtually by their side so they can use money as a mechanism to positively change their worlds. And I, even upon graduation, couldn't fully appreciate that. And when I graduated, I worked first in management consulting and then in financial services. And quite honestly, put most simply, Colleen, it was a series of health instances that were never anticipated. And I have no problem sharing it because it's part of my own story, that in fewer than 5 years, I had multiple miscarriages, 7 miscarriages. I gained 80 pounds and lost 60 as I managed them. And I was diagnosed with alopecia areata universalis, which is an immune condition where you lose all of your hair. So even to this day, this is all fake thanks to YouTube. And it was in those moments of, oh my God, I looked to my husband and we as a family said, what are we going to do? This is not according to any plan we wanted. It wasn't according to our family building plans. And upon much reflection, much introspection, and thanks to the love of him and the love and support of family and lots of specialists, I then used that to pivot again. And I said, you know what? I enjoy finance. I enjoy helping people. And while I've enjoyed this career as a corporate global professional in finance, I want to make it personal for others and make it real. So I use those financial planning tools ingrained in my youth. I developed and deliberately with my husband did new savings and spending strategies, built up our own financial picture so that we as a team could afford me to pivot and do life change to now become a certified financial planner and private wealth advisor. And now I can genuinely say hand on heart, I know how it feels when life doesn't happen according to plan. And with you can help you use money to change your circumstances so you can have more power.
Well, that's really the key is to, I think that's the thing, it's to be able to pivot without shame, to be able to pivot without blame. Like you had, excuse me, obviously unfortunate circumstances, but you turned them into something. You used all the skills you now got from those experiences, right? All the resilience and like, let me look at life, and you use that to turn a corner. And I think with money, most of us get stuck on that it is how it is and we can't see around the corner. Mm-hmm. So when you have people like yourself who can say, no, wait, there isn't around the corner. I can get you around the corner. I'll help you get around the corner. But I think most of us with finances, you think it's always going to be what it is.
Yes, you are absolutely right, Colleen. And we, in some ways, here I just want to acknowledge some of what we are learning about our money behaviors and those expectations. Some of the latest studies indicate that our understanding and first experiences and expectations of money are formulated as early as 3 years old. And by the time we're 7 years old, we already, even though we're not consciously as 7-year-old children in second grade saying it, we have an operational or initial understanding about how this exchange works, and more fundamentally as well, what are the kind of emotions and values that we have observed other people have around it that then we subconsciously or unconsciously assume as our own. And so you're absolutely right, Colleen, in ways we don't realize we have these expectations, and it was a function, according to the latest studies, of circumstances too.
Well, I also, right, so you can see even what you were saying with your parents' story and how you were raised around money. I remember with my parents, my mother had a little book where she had her mortgage, the oil money, and it was all in cash. And then my dad would take the cash and then he'd go to the bank and he'd pay whatever. And I remember my mother budgeting that way. Like everything was paid and you never ever used a credit card unless you absolutely had to. And you could pay it off within like the next month, the next billing cycle. Excuse me. So, you'll learn those things. You learn how money is I've seen money be in people's wallets, like when we actually had cash, right?
Yeah.
We used cash. Remember back in the day when we had cash? But you could see like some people would fold it up and stuff it in or stuff it in their pocket. And I would be like, oh, like I always had mine just in order, but I really can look back and say, well, that's because my mom had all her money in order. And so no one told me to do that. No one told me how to do any of that, but you do watch. And so I do think it's a little different now because all I think children see is there's the debit card paying for you never really see the money. I get nervous a little bit around that, like because money isn't a card, it's not, right? So I wonder how that will be with the next generation when it's kind of cashless and you kind of have to think of it up here.
Mhm.
You know, I used to be a math teacher, and so teaching kids about that real concept of cash was okay because you had it. You know, you
Got
could
it.
put it out on the desk and you could put, you know, you could do that and percentages and things. But I think with these debit cards and everything, or these kids get these cards on their own, and I don't, do you see any concerns about that?
I hear what you're saying 100% in that currently there are new challenges prompting us to need to think differently around how we teach ongoing concepts. And I am both sensitized to it and inspired. And what do I mean by that? Sensitized because the sooner we can all acknowledge this, then we have an opportunity to change it. And I'm compelled to think and also have learned some great examples around how both teachers as well as parents have used with the same focus, trying to teach their kids about money, the same things they're trying to teach their kids about kindness or about sharing or about generosity or about love. And I mean, these are also abstract concepts. It's very difficult to pull up something and says, this is love and this is what you do with it. And I think somehow, some way we have adapted and somehow we have learned to appreciate what it is and how to share that. And I think that's why I'm inspired, because let's use that which we know today. We now might be doing more cards or apps on our phones or other ways to facilitate the exchange. And so how can we creatively help people understand it? By way of example, a wonderful and inspiring friend and mentor of mine who was one of my coaches teaching me to pursue this professional path shared with me at one time a story, and she said that she, for her own children, and now this was back when allowances were, you know, with dollars again, so that is a caveat with the teaching, but she said, you know what, I'm going to teach you about how to save for retirement. So, you know, whereas my parents were teaching me about giving to charity and putting some in the bank, she was teaching about retirement planning, and the way she taught her son, okay, for every portion of your physical dollar that you put into this piggy bank, and she literally had a piggy bank, I will match your contribution 1 for 1. And so my only point being, Colleen, that I think parents and people who are just open to learning and sharing in general have a limitless, abundant way to share that with others, as long as we allow ourselves the creativity to do so. And that's why I'm inspired that I think there are new ways to help people understand the power of money, for sure.
Well, there has to be, and we have to actually be inspired by that, because you can't say it's going to be a cashless society at some point in time, and it's only coming to be something different. And you can't sit and say, well, I don't like that. You have to run with it, and not be afraid of it. And I also think that's like, you know, like my daughter's older, she's 28, but I'll be, you know, writing a check, because I still write checks, write that check and, you know, send it in the mail. And she's like, you don't have that on auto pay? Like, and I'm like, no. Or like, I'll say I went to the bank. The bank, like, they don't, like, there is this generation. I'm like, well, if I don't go to the bank, people won't have jobs. That's kind of how I look at it. Like, we still need that interpersonal, but it's that generational shift, not that her way is better or worse. But I'm saying to myself, I need to probably embrace a little more of what I don't want to embrace, because I kind of like what I know.
Sure.
You know, I think there's fear in, I don't know what I don't know, but I trust what I do know.
Yep.
Because it hasn't failed me, but I don't know over there. So there are these generational, for me at least, I think, shifts. Do you see that among some of your clients too?
I do see among clients exactly what you describe, an interest in sticking with what we know works, and a caution around what's new or different. And that's where I like to acknowledge that and initially be okay with that, to try to say, you know, what is it about this new financial decision that you're contemplating, this new life circumstance that's prompting you to be curious and cautious. Because I value that cautious initial fear because I view it as a flag and as a trigger. It's helping us tell us something's different. But the opportunity comes with trying to understand what it is and then manage it with information, just like what you were saying earlier, Colleen, when something happens, to move through it and take then the turn. Or we don't want to be stuck in that feeling or that paralysis of not taking action, because then we will miss the opportunity. You know, it goes back to the whole proverbial, I'm not going to get the statistic exactly right, but the idea that if we all truly knew how risky driving on highways really was, how likely would any of us be to do it? But the benefit of physically getting from one place to another outweighs the costs.
Right.
And so whether it's a new financial decision or a new way of conducting finances virtually, electronically, let's understand the risks. Let's understand what are the safety measures that are being introduced with this new electronic digital society. And we don't have to do everything all at once. Just like my mother-in-law taught me, you know, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Let's start only with, let's start to link an account, and let's start with just starting to put one step in place and then go from there.
Do you notice, Caroline, do you notice gender differences around people around money, or is it pretty even keel? Men and women, doesn't matter?
I personally haven't noticed a difference per se in the genders. I have done a lot of reading and a lot of analyses that indicate that from a broad base, women in general prefer to collect more information before making a financial decision, versus men do not need as much additional detail to then arrive at a decision, by way of example. What I am grateful for and what I enjoy very much is the people that I work with, by and large, have a curiosity to understand. It doesn't mean that they want to know the detail of every last point, because otherwise they would want to specialize and do this for a living.
Right.
But what I'm grateful for is the curiosity there. And then perhaps by gender or perhaps by individual person, how much information they want, when and how they then choose the information, and what additional ongoing support best helps them feel financially confident does look different over time. And I would be remiss to be able at this point to say hand on heart, there are gender trends per se. I think, but I understand from the research that there are. And the other thing that I acknowledge is that it's important to be flexible with whomever you're meeting with in that moment, because we do learn differently, we have different needs, and to try to pivot to where men or women are at with what they're seeking.
That makes sense. I think the reason I asked that question is in my, I do a lot of divorce mediations and coaching beyond divorce. And what I see often is when couples come in, especially when they're fairly traditional couples, or couples that are women that are more my age, and so, which is above 25, a little bit. But I think what I see is women who, I'll be talking about, a Roth, or where you're, dividends or whatever it's going to be, deferred comp, or you're talking about some things and trying to get an understanding. And there's this blank face because they don't know a lot of times what the terminology means, because they haven't managed the money, and they are very nervous about how to divide that. Is it really fair? I'm not really sure what they're doing. And so my biggest thing in divorce is, like, you don't really need an attorney. 80% of divorces they don't use attorneys. It's really the solid 23% that either are going to argue or have a lot of assets to divide up. But what I've found is that women are the ones who are more uncertain, I guess, and nervous around decision making, around around money. And so I didn't know if you had noticed that as well, but I always think you need a good financial person in a divorce. If you have nothing else, have a good financial person to get you through it and then to get you set up beyond it.
Yep. I value and respect your experience and what you described, Colleen. And one thing I do know with experience as well, to complement what you're saying, is as a woman who both has worked in financial services for 20 years and myself personally investing for a few decades now,
Right.
women as a gender have been underserviced by financial services. So when you are meeting with both a male and a female in that tremendous time of uncertainty, when already on top of their personal life, their intellectual and social life, you're now layering financial life decisions, it is unfortunate and it is frustrating that you are seeing firsthand that blank face, because that, I would argue, is a product of years and years in the making. And it's not to slight the industry, because we are a function of circumstance, and women, thank God, as well as men who have supported them, have been supportive of women increasingly being active in financial services. But the fact that women today may not know the details of how things work is a consequence of perhaps the information not being relayed, or relayed in ways that resonate for her, and also a function that both men and women face, which is so many competing priorities. If she herself is just trying to balance her career or her role as a parent, how many hours do any of us have in a day to now also understand the financial innuendo? So thank goodness there are professionals like you, Colleen, to be with them in those moments of tremendous change and educate them. And I share your observation that as over time, women as an investor group, women as a cohort of financial decision makers have not had access or information relayed to them in ways that have been meaningful for them. And that's why I think there's tremendous opportunity in doing things like this and presenting innovative ways to make finance less abstract and theoretical and more accessible and meaningful and personal and real.
Yeah, you know, my daughter, I reference her because she's just she's 28, so she's a good model for me to see. Like, you think you did a good job as a mother. She gets out of college. She got her first job before she even left college.
Wow. And
which I was so happy. But when it came to, you know, signing all the paperwork, well, how much do you want to put in this? Where are your investments? She's calling me because, like, why don't we get taught any of this in high school? Never mind college. She goes, she wasn't on that, you know, financial track in terms of that wasn't her course of study. So then you get a job. She doesn't know how much to put away. She doesn't know how much, you know, even when you're doing your taxes, you know, she goes, do I have zero? Do I have one? What? You know, and getting people. But as she's gotten older, she's learned to, through both with myself and just on her own, just learn to be able to save and have a vision for her retirement.
Yes.
You know, and I have no doubt that she will achieve that. But to go in, she almost, you know, I was so busy getting her through school that I wasn't thinking about the prep work for her financial world, because you're busy paying for college, keeping everything afloat. And unless she was good with money anyways, I mean, there was never a debt problem. But I look back and I'm like, we could have done that a little differently. Like, you know, and I think that's a good thing, because then I take that about myself and then I speak to it with other parents who are now sending sons or daughters off to school and say, talk about the financials before they go to school, not like at the end.
Yes. And I love, Colleen, how you are sharing your experiences with others, because that's what makes it powerful and accessible. You know, one thing that comes to mind immediately is, for generations that precede us, they had a combination of circumstances that are very different for our generation and your daughter's generation and future ones. Right. Things like, they, on average, our previous generations lived until their mid-60s. on average, there were different, clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And now in our generation, with both men and women living till their mid-80s, and on average, women outliving men by 6 years, and along the way, men and women, and even across different racial differences, earning different amounts of cents on the dollar, with women on average earning 82 cents on a dollar. And now with previously pensions and quote unquote guarantees to help you along the way, those are all not necessarily as available.
Right.
And so to your point, this has all happened very quickly. And as a result, it takes courage, and it takes awareness, and it takes a desire and an interest to say, I see now our life circumstances are different. And I am going to use my work, I'm going to use my personal social connections to help more people understand it. And to not be intimidated by it, but to realize the power of it so you can make new and different choices. And I loved how you described it, even how your daughter has a vision for her future.
She does.
Because I think that's the key. The sooner we can acknowledge that we have choices, and the sooner we can connect to, this is what I uniquely want for me, that then becomes the catalyst for change and action and behavioral adjustments over time. And as a consequence of her vision, she's done the savings and et cetera. That's like,
yeah,
that brings music to my ears.
I think she's most proud that she makes more than her boyfriend. I think that's what she's most proud of. But, you know, now that she's, I know she'll be married in the next couple of years, but I think now our conversation has pivoted to, she makes 6 figures, and at 28, like, good for her. But now it is, if I have a child, how do you give that up, Mom? Do you give that up? Like, now you're having those real conversations, which, listen, I never had any of those conversations about anything with, my parents are both still here. They're 93, God bless them. But we didn't have any of those conversations. But I obviously learned good money skills along the way. But I'm grateful to be able to sit down and say, well, here are your choices. Here are some options. And what could you do now in case you do need to take a span of time off? What could you do now? Could you put more in? Like, it's really having that dialogue that I love.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
to give her, I don't want to say empower. I think we're all powered up, all of us, no matter what the gender, but just to be able to embrace the idea that you can plan financially for things so that they can come about and be in a way that works for you.
Yes, yes. And I love how you are creating that conversation, that space for it. You know, it was very moving. A couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with a woman about her finances, and she provided me words that I now cling to and I love to share with others. That even in experiences like this today, what she observed we were doing was making that which is taboo real. And so I think as soon as we can remove the stigma or the anxiety or the taboo, that which is supposedly not as commonplace, more casual, more real, then, you know, it's just a matter of fact. It's a matter of life. Money is a means to an end, a means to facilitate a vision. And if you want to optimize your opportunity, if you want to be most likely to make it happen, here are the new and different choices available to you in this moment. And you know what? Those choices, because life changes, will change in 6 months. Let's revisit it again.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm a big fan of reaching out to people, because I know what I know, and I think I'm good at what I know, but you're going to know what you know to help me, because that's my lack, right? And so, because you can't know everything. And that's why I say to people, you need to see somebody. There's no shame in whether you see a therapist or a coach or a financial person, or it's no different if you go to a doctor for something. Like, everybody's got their skill sets and interests, and you need to reach out to people to get the knowledge they have. That's the point. That's because you can't know everything. I had a woman, lovely, lovely woman, and she said, well, I'm just so embarrassed. I don't know. And I don't know how this happened with her finances going through the divorce. She really just didn't quite get it. And I said, because you were busy doing other things.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
if I asked your husband, maybe, how did you get that Girl Scout badge? Maybe he probably doesn't know because
Right.
you were busy doing the Girl Scout badge. So like, it's taking that shame off of it all too, and realizing we're not supposed to know everything.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
I love how you're putting that. Yes. The sooner we can be gentle and realize that we don't have the burden on our shoulders of expectation or obligation. The opportunity and invitation we have is to be in this moment now, to be open, to be curious, to seek to understand, and then make informed decisions on life, whether it's relationships, whether it's careers, whether it's finances. And the sooner we can free ourselves of preconceived expectations that are not really there,
Yes.
then we can free ourselves up to do something new or different. Definitely.
Yes, and I think especially as women, and I'm not saying this to say anything about men, but as women, we definitely think we're supposed to know it all and be in charge of everything, and nothing could be further from the truth. And it's maddening because there's no way humanly possible. Forget your gender. There's no way humanly possible to know everything and to be able to do everything.
No.
Right.
And here's where I'd harken back to, if you don't mind, I love different random lessons my mom and dad taught me. I remember very vividly, I came home from school and I didn't get a very good grade on something. And grades, like I said, were important, and being the daughter of two teachers. And my mom said to me in that moment, she put her arm around me and she said, "Carolyn, just breathe. Just breathe." And she said, I looked at her and she said, think of it this way, because I was a child at the time. She says, "Not all oranges have to be apples, and both are tasty fruits." And the point here is, Colleen, in that loving way that a teacher tells her daughter who is upset, own who you are, whoever that beautiful person is, and know that that person is good, and you have other people and other resources around you to engage and use, to be recognized for their specialties too.
I love that. Wise words from mom, for sure. If you ever write a book, you should put that as a title.
Love it.
I do too. So if you were to leave people here with some words of wisdom from yourself and maybe from mom too, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm lying in bed, it's midnight, and I found this video on YouTube and I'm listening to about finances, whether I'm a man or a woman, and I'm listening, and my financial life isn't where I want it to be. I'm not even going to say it's a mess because of that's so subjective, but it's not where I want it to be. What could you share to help somebody take an initiative to do something?
Sure. I would offer three things. The first thing is, I would like you to take a moment and just breathe. This is an important moment when you realize and you have the self-awareness that where you are now is different from where you want to be. And I want to commend you and acknowledge you and say, this is an opportunity to just breathe. The second thing I would invite you to do is provide yourself a space to reflect and map out. It could be write down, it could be think about, what is it that's different? What is it that you would like to have changed? What is it that when you say it's not where you want to be, this is no judgment, just try to put some words or some way of expressing and it relates to the vision that you mentioned earlier your daughter has. How would you like it to be different? Try to quantify it, try to put words around it. And then you could write it down, because then it becomes real.
Absolutely.
And then the third step would be, in light of what you write down, is it, I'd like to save more? Is it, I want to retire someday? Is it, my partner and I have different views of money and it's freaking me out? Depending upon what that second item is, then this is your opportunity, step 3, to do some research and see who are the apples in the world, who are the specialists in this space that can help you acknowledge that point, those points in number 2 that you want to change, and provide you the right support and guidance and framework to initiate that change. And depending upon what those changes are, they could be different specialists available. But first, breathe. You are at an important moment of awareness. Secondarily, acknowledge it, make it real, write it down, try to put some clarity around what that sense is. And thirdly, seek specialists to assist you in the process. Any specialist worth his or her salt will have a complimentary initial discussion with you around what you're seeking anyway, and worth their salt, they're going to point you in the right direction.
That's fantastic advice. And I love starting out with your mom. Just breathe, right? Just breathe. Take a breath. And there's something biological about that, right? Physiological, that can really be beneficial to getting that air up into us, right? Just take a deep breath and calm down.
Definitely.
And you know, in breath, there's that moment where we'll be okay. And I think that's what you're saying. You'll be okay. We'll create a plan, and we'll get you in touch with the person who can help you get there.
Exactly.
You know, when you say it like that, for anybody listening, this isn't to be demeaning or anything. It really is that simple, but it's not, right? We make it harder for ourselves than it needs to be. But I think you've put it succinctly and simply and really and kindly. And I think people, when it comes to finances, need to be held with loving hands, right?
I love how you use the word kind, because Colleen, I couldn't agree more. You know, it's not necessarily what we do only that matters in life, but how we do it along the way. Because we just here are trying to make the best decisions we can, and if we can do it with a sense of kindness, I think that's essential.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, I could talk all day, Caroline, but I think we'll have to have you back. I think that's a must. I really have enjoyed our time and your words of wisdom and incorporating nuggets from your childhood. And, you know, I love when people do that, because it makes people feel very present, you know, and honest. And so I appreciate that. So thank you so much. This was a great conversation. It's exactly what I wanted to have. And I'll look forward to having another at some point.
Sounds wonderful. And thank you, Colleen, for your vision and for making this possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And have a great day.
You too.
And we'll be in touch. Take care.
Definitely. You too. Bye.